My wife said I like having you but don't know if I love you. I turned distant roommate rules and cut extras into cold, quiet, self-respect revenge. One of those bombs on me. And honestly, I should probably thank her for the clarity. We were sitting in our living room last Thursday evening. She was scrolling through her phone while I was reading when, out of nowhere, she said something that made me put my book down and really look at her. "I need to tell you something," she started, not even looking up from her screen. "I've been thinking about us lately, and I realized something important." The way she said it, so casual, like she was commenting on the weather. "I like having you around. You're comfortable. You take care of things, you're reliable. And honestly, life is easier with you here." She finally looked at me then, "But I don't know if I actually love you anymore." Now, most guys would probably start panicking right about here, start asking questions, maybe even begging for explanations. But you know what I did? I closed my book, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "Thank you for being honest." The confusion on her face was priceless. She clearly expected drama, tears, maybe me fighting for our marriage. Instead, I just nodded, like she'd given me useful information, because she had. "So, if I understand correctly," I continued, keeping my voice calm and measured, "you see me as someone convenient to have around, someone who makes your life easier. Is that accurate?" She shifted uncomfortably but nodded. "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds harsh, but yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying." "Not harsh at all," I replied, standing up and stretching. "Actually, it makes perfect sense. And since you've been so clear about how you see our arrangement, I think it's only fair that I adjust my behavior accordingly." The next morning, everything changed. When she came down for breakfast, there was no coffee waiting for her like usual, no plate of eggs and toast, just me sitting at the kitchen table with my own breakfast, reading the news on my tablet. "Where's my coffee?" she asked, looking around confused. I glanced up briefly. "Coffee maker's right there, same place it's always been. But you always make me coffee in the morning." "That was when I was your husband," I said, going back to my tablet. "But according to our conversation yesterday, I'm more like a roommate who makes your life easier. And roommates typically handle their own coffee." She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. "Come on, don't be dramatic. You know what I meant." "Actually, I think you were quite clear. You like having me around because I'm convenient and reliable. So I'm going to be exactly that. Convenient and reliable, like a good roommate." I finished my breakfast, rinsed my plate, and headed toward the door. "Oh, and I'll be splitting all the household expenses 50-50 from now on. I'll email you a breakdown of everything. Have a good day." The look on her face as I walked out was a mixture of confusion and something else. Maybe the first tiny hint that she hadn't thought this through as well as she'd imagined. At work that day, I felt lighter than I had in months. It was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For years, I'd been pouring emotional energy into someone who saw me as a convenience. Now that the cards were on the table, I could stop pretending and just be exactly what she said she wanted. When I got home that evening, she was waiting for me in the kitchen. "We need to talk about this morning," she said. "What about it?" "You were being petty. Making coffee isn't a big deal." I set my keys down and turned to face her. "You're absolutely right. Making coffee isn't a big deal. Neither is making breakfast or remembering your favorite dinner or listening to you complain about your coworkers for an hour every night. None of those things are a big deal when you love someone." I paused. "But you just told me you don't know if you love me, so why would I do any of those things?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. For the first time in years, she didn't have a quick comeback. "Look," I continued, "I'm not angry. I'm actually grateful. You've helped me understand exactly where I stand. You like having me around because I make your life easier, so that's what I'll do. I'll be here, I'll be reliable, and I'll make sure my half of everything gets handled. But all those extra things I used to do, those were for someone I thought loved me back." That night, I moved my pillow to the guest room. When she asked why, I explained it simply. Roommates don't share beds. The expression on her face told me she was starting to realize that her moment of honesty might have cost her more than she'd bargained for. But this was what she wanted, right? Someone convenient and reliable, without all that messy love stuff getting in the way. She was about to learn the difference between having a husband and having a roommate. And frankly, I was curious to see how long it would take her to figure out which one she actually preferred. The first week of our new arrangement was enlightening, to say the least. I stuck to my word completely. Every morning, I made my own breakfast, grabbed my own coffee, and headed out the door with nothing more than a polite "have a good day." No kiss goodbye, no asking about her plans, no checking if she needed anything from the store. She seemed almost relieved at first, like she'd gotten exactly what she wanted without any of the emotional complexity. But by day 3, I noticed her watching me more carefully, like she was trying to figure out if I was playing some kind of game. I wasn't. This was simply the logical conclusion of her own words. Friday evening, she tried to slide back into old patterns. "Want to order pizza and watch a movie tonight?" she asked as I walked through the door. "Sure," I replied. "What do you want to watch?" Her face lit up. "How about that new romantic comedy everyone's talking about?" "Actually, I was thinking more like a documentary or something. You know, roommate-appropriate viewing." I pulled out my phone. "I'll order my own pizza. What do you want on yours?" The confusion was back. "My own pizza? Well, yeah. We're splitting expenses now, remember? It doesn't make sense for me to pay for your food." I scrolled through the menu. "Unless you want to split a pizza 50-50, that would be more economical." She stared at me. "This is ridiculous. We've always shared food. We've always shared a lot of things. But that was when we were married. Now we're more like, what did you call it? Oh, right. You like having me around because I'm convenient." I looked up from my phone. "Roommates split expenses. It's actually pretty standard." That night, we ate our separate pizzas while watching a nature documentary about Arctic wolves. She kept trying to start conversations about us, but I redirected everything to safe, roommate-level topics: the weather, current events, whether we needed to call the landlord about the leaky faucet. The weekend was when things really started to sink in for her. Saturday morning, she came downstairs in that outfit she used to wear when she wanted attention. You know the one. Every married guy knows the one. "Good morning," she said, a little too sweetly. "Morning," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. I was researching apartments, actually, not to move out but to understand current market rates. Knowledge is power, and I wanted to know exactly what this place was worth if we needed to divide assets. "What are you doing?" "Just checking some things online." I closed the laptop. "I'm heading out to run errands." "Need anything?" "Where are you going?" "Grocery store, bank, maybe the gym after. You know, Saturday stuff." "Can I come with?" I paused. "Why would you want to do that?" "We used to run errands together." "Yeah, when we were a couple. But you don't need to come with me to the grocery store. I'm just getting my stuff." I grabbed my keys. "I'll be back in a few hours." The look she gave me was interesting, like she was seeing me differently but couldn't quite put her finger on what had changed. When I got back, she was cleaning the house. Deep cleaning, like scrubbing baseboards and organizing closets. She was clearly trying to create some kind of domestic scene, maybe hoping to trigger old patterns. "House looks great," I said, carrying my groceries to the kitchen. "I thought we could make dinner together tonight, like we used to." "That's thoughtful, but I already picked up stuff for myself." I started putting away my groceries, making sure they stayed separate from hers. "You're welcome to use the kitchen after I'm done, though." "After you're done?" "Well, yeah. It makes sense to coordinate kitchen time, right? Otherwise, we'll just be in each other's way." I cooked my dinner while she watched from the living room, occasionally walking by with random questions. "Do we have any garlic powder? Where did you put the good pan? Is there salt in this cabinet?" Each time I answered politely but didn't offer to help or include her, because why would I? Roommates don't cook for each other unless it's specifically arranged beforehand. After dinner, she tried a different approach. "Want to go for a walk? It's such a nice evening." "Thanks, but I'm good. I already got my exercise at the gym earlier. We could just walk and talk." "Talk about what?" She opened her mouth, then seemed to realize she didn't have an answer. "What do roommates talk about on evening walks?" "Not their feelings, certainly. Not their relationship. Because what relationship?" Sunday was even more telling. She kept trying to create moments, suggesting we read the paper together, asking if I wanted to watch the game with her, even offering to make brunch for both of us. Each time, I politely declined or redirected. "I'm good with my own paper. Not really into football, thanks, but I already ate." By Sunday evening, I could see the frustration building. She was pacing around the house, starting conversations that went nowhere, looking at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Finally, she exploded. "What is wrong with you?" I looked up from my book. "Nothing's wrong." "What?" "You're acting like a stranger." "No, I'm acting like a roommate, which is what you wanted, right?" I marked my page and set the book down. "You said you like having me around because I'm convenient and reliable. So I'm being convenient and reliable. I pay my share. I keep my space clean. I don't bother you with unnecessary emotional stuff. Perfect roommate behavior. But we're married." "Are we, though?" I tilted my head slightly. Because married people usually love each other, and you specifically told me you don't know if you love me anymore. So what exactly are we? She had no answer for that, because how do you argue with your own words? That night, as I headed to the guest room, I heard her crying softly in our old bedroom. For just a moment, I almost went to comfort her. But then I remembered, roommates don't comfort each other about relationship problems. That would be overstepping boundaries. She was learning the difference between having someone who loves you and having someone who's just convenient to have around. The funny thing was, I was learning it too, and honestly, being just a roommate was a lot less work. Week 2 brought a new level of desperation from her, though she tried to hide it behind casual conversation attempts. Monday morning, she came down wearing one of my old t-shirts. You know, that move women pull when they want to remind you of intimacy without actually saying anything. "Morning," she said, lingering by the coffee maker longer than necessary. "Morning," I replied, grabbing my travel mug and heading for the door. "Wait, don't you want to know about my dream last night?" I paused. "Why would I want to know about your dream?" She blinked. "We used to share our dreams with each other." "Yeah, couples do that. People in love do that." I checked my watch. "But roommates? Not so much." "That would be kind of weird, don't you think?" The hurt on her face was obvious, but I kept moving. Because here's the thing, she had made the rules. I was just following them to their logical conclusion. At work, my colleagues started noticing changes in me. I was more focused, more decisive. When my boss asked if I could stay late for a project, I didn't immediately think about getting home to handle her problems or listen to her day. I just said yes. "You seem different lately," my coworker mentioned during lunch. "More, I don't know, confident?" "Just some changes at home," I said. "Nothing major." But it was major. For years, I'd been operating as half of a unit, always considering her needs, her feelings, her schedule. Now I was operating as just me, and honestly, it felt good. When I got home that evening, late because of the project, she was waiting in the kitchen with dinner already made. "I made your favorite," she said, gesturing to the plate she'd prepared. "That's thoughtful." But I grabbed something on the way home. I headed toward the stairs. "Thanks, though. You grabbed something?" Her voice had an edge to it. "You used to call when you were going to be late." I turned back. "Did I? Why would I do that?" "So I wouldn't worry. So I could plan dinner accordingly." "But why would you worry about me? And why would you plan dinner for me?" I genuinely looked confused. You made it pretty clear that we're not in that kind of relationship anymore." She stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. "I made dinner because..." "Because what? Because you love me? Because you want to take care of me?" I waited. Those aren't really roommate behaviors, are they? She had no answer. Tuesday, she tried a different approach. When I came home, she was on the couch crying over some drama with her sister. The old me would have immediately sat down, put my arm around her, and spent an hour helping her process the whole situation. Instead, I paused in the doorway. "Everything okay?" "No," she sniffled. "My sister is being impossible about Mom's birthday, and I don't know what to do." "That sounds frustrating," I said and kept walking toward the kitchen. "That's it?" she called after me. "That's all you're going to say?" I came back to the doorway. "What else would you like me to say?" "I don't know. Help me figure it out. Give me advice, something." Why would I do that? The question hung in the air. She opened her mouth, then closed it, because the answer was obvious, and she couldn't say it. I would help her figure it out because I loved her, because I cared about her problems, because her pain mattered to me. But she'd already told me she didn't know if she loved me back. "Roommates don't typically get involved in each other's family drama," I explained gently. "That would be overstepping boundaries." By Wednesday, the pattern was clear. She kept trying to pull me into emotional intimacy, and I kept politely redirecting her back to roommate-appropriate interaction. When she complained about work, I listened politely but offered no solutions. When she mentioned feeling sick, I suggested she call a doctor instead of offering to take care of her. When she tried to start deep conversations about life, I kept everything surface level. Thursday evening was when she finally cracked. I was reading in the living room when she sat down across from me, clearly agitated. "We need to talk." "Sure. What's up?" "This isn't working." I looked up from my book. "What isn't working?" "I think our arrangement is working perfectly. Bills are split evenly. House is clean. No drama. Seems like an ideal roommate situation to me. That's exactly the problem. I don't want a roommate." Well, that's unfortunate, because that's what you asked for. I set my book down. You specifically told me you like having me around because I'm convenient and reliable, but you don't know if you love me. So, I'm being convenient and reliable. Mission accomplished. But I miss, she started, then stopped. You miss what? I miss you caring about me. But I do care about you. I care about you exactly as much as a good roommate should. I make sure you're safe. I don't leave messes for you to clean up. I pay my share of everything. That's caring. That's not what I mean, and you know it. No, I really don't know what you mean, because the kind of caring you're talking about comes from love, and you told me you don't know if you love me anymore. I leaned forward slightly. So why would you expect me to love you back? The silence was long and uncomfortable. She was realizing, maybe for the first time, that love wasn't something she could just assume would always be there waiting for her, that treating someone like a convenience had consequences. I never said I didn't love you, she whispered. You said you didn't know if you love me, which is actually worse, because it means you've been thinking about it and you're genuinely unsure. I picked up my book again. At least if you'd said you didn't love me, I'd know it was definitive. This way, I'm just someone you're keeping around while you figure out your feelings. Friday night, she tried one last approach. She suggested we go out to dinner, just the two of us. Like a date, she said hopefully. Why would we go on a date? Because we're married. Are we? Or are we roommates who happen to share a last name? I pulled out my phone. Tell you what, I'll look up some good restaurants, and we can split the bill. That would be a nice roommate dinner out. The devastation on her face was complete. She was finally understanding that you can't have it both ways. You can't tell someone you don't know if you love them, and then expect them to keep acting like someone who loves you back. That night, as I got ready for bed in the guest room, I could hear her moving around restlessly in the master bedroom. She was learning a hard lesson about taking people for granted, and honestly, it was about time. Week 3 started with her pulling out all the stops. Saturday morning, I woke up to the smell of pancakes. My favorite kind, the one she used to make for special occasions. When I came downstairs, she had the whole spread laid out. Fresh fruit, bacon, orange juice, even flowers on the table. Surprise, she said with forced cheerfulness. I made your favorite breakfast. I stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. This looks great. What's the occasion? No occasion. I just wanted to do something nice. That's sweet of you, but I already ate. I held up the protein bar I'd grabbed from my stash. Plus, this seems like a lot of work just for roommates. Her smile faltered. Come on, just sit down and eat with me. I made enough for both of us. I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not really comfortable with this. I gestured to the elaborate setup. This feels like you're trying to create some kind of romantic scene, and that doesn't really fit our current arrangement. Our current arrangement is stupid. There it was, the mask finally slipping. Why is it stupid? I asked calmly. You told me exactly how you felt. I'm simply respecting those feelings. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it then? I leaned against the doorframe. Because you were pretty specific. You like having me around because I'm convenient and reliable, but you don't know if you love me anymore. Those were your exact words. She started clearing the table aggressively, slamming plates more than necessary. You're being deliberately obtuse. No, I'm being logical. You set the parameters of our relationship. I'm operating within those parameters. I checked my watch. I'm heading to the gym. Enjoy your breakfast. When I got back 2 hours later, she was waiting for me in the living room, clearly having prepared some kind of speech. We need to reset this whole thing, she announced. This roommate nonsense has gone on long enough. I sat down across from her. Why would we reset? I thought you'd be happy. You're getting exactly what you asked for, someone convenient and reliable who doesn't burden you with messy emotional expectations. That's not what I asked for. Isn't it though? I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. Let me read you something. I'd actually written down her exact words that first night, knowing this moment would come. You said, and I quote, I like having you around. You're comfortable. You take care of things. You're reliable. And honestly, life is easier with you here, but I don't know if I actually love you anymore. Her face went pale as I read her own words back to her. So, help me understand, I continued. What part of my current behavior doesn't align with what you said you wanted? You're twisting my words. I'm not twisting anything. I'm taking them at face value. I put my phone away. You want someone who makes your life easier without the emotional complexity of actually loving them. That's what you have now. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. You know what I think? I think you're enjoying this. I think you're punishing me. Punishing you for what? For being honest about my feelings?
I laughed, and not kindly. You think I'm punishing you by giving you exactly what you said you wanted? That's interesting logic.
You're being cruel. No, I'm being practical. What would be cruel is continuing to invest emotional energy in someone who sees me as a convenience. I stood up. You know what the funny thing is? I'm actually happier now. No more wondering if you appreciate the things I do. No more trying to read your moods or fix your problems. No more walking on eggshells around someone who doesn't even know if she loves me. The look on her face was a mixture of shock and hurt, like she'd never considered that her uncertainty about loving me might actually be liberating from me. So, you don't love me anymore either? She whispered. That's the wrong question. What's the right question? The right question is, why would I continue loving someone who told me she doesn't know if she loves me back? I headed toward the stairs. I'm not a masochist. I don't enjoy being someone's backup plan while they figure out their feelings. Sunday afternoon, she tried a different tactic. She attempted to seduce me, came into the living room wearing lingerie under a robe, sat down next to me on the couch while I was watching TV. I miss being close to you, she said, letting the robe fall open slightly. I glanced over, then back at the TV. That's inappropriate. Inappropriate? Yeah, roommates don't do this kind of thing. It would make the living situation uncomfortable. I reached for the remote and changed the channel. You might want to put some clothes on. The rejection hit her like a physical blow. She wrapped the robe tighter around herself and stared at me. You don't find me attractive anymore. What I find attractive or unattractive isn't really relevant to our current arrangement. I kept my eyes on the TV. Physical intimacy is for people who love each other. Since you don't know if you love me, it wouldn't be appropriate. She started crying then. Not the quiet tears from before, but full-on sobbing. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have said what I said. Which part was the mistake? I muted the TV and turned to face her. Saying, you don't know if you love me, or admitting it out loud? Both. Neither. I don't know. See, that's the problem right there. You don't know. You don't know if you love me. You don't know if what you said was a mistake. You don't know what you want. I unmuted the TV. Until you figure out what you do know, I think our current arrangement works perfectly. That night, she came to the guest room, stood in the doorway in her pajamas, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Can we please just talk like we used to? We are talking. We talk every day. You know what I mean. Really talk about us. What about us? I set down the book I was reading. You've been very clear about your feelings. I've adjusted accordingly. What else is there to discuss? I want things to go back to how they were before. Before what? Before you told me how you really felt about me? I shook my head. That's not how this works. You can't unring that bell. So that's it. You're just done. I'm not done. I'm here, aren't I? I'm being exactly what you said you wanted, someone convenient and reliable. I picked up my book again. The difference is, now I know where I stand, and honestly, it's a relief. She stood there for a long moment, and I could see her wrestling with something. Finally, she whispered, what if I said I do love you? I looked up at her. Do you? The pause was too long. The uncertainty was still there in her eyes. I thought so, I said, and went back to my book. Good night. She was learning that some words, once spoken, can't be taken back. And I was learning that sometimes the best response to someone's uncertainty about you is to become certain about them. Month 1 was coming to an end, and she was in full panic mode. I could see it in everything she did, the way she watched me constantly, analyzing every interaction for signs that I might be softening, the way she jumped at any opportunity to be helpful or create moments of connection. The problem was, I wasn't softening. If anything, I was getting more comfortable with our new dynamic. Tuesday evening, she cornered me as I was making dinner. I've been thinking about what you said about not being able to unring the bell. Okay, I replied, not looking up from chopping vegetables. What if I could prove to you that I was wrong, that I do love you? How would you do that? I don't know. Tell me what I need to do. I stopped chopping and looked at her. You want me to give you a checklist, like some kind of test to prove you love your husband? If that's what it takes, yes. That's not how love works. Either you feel it or you don't. Either you know it or you don't. I went back to my vegetables. The fact that you're asking me how to prove it kind of proves you still don't know. She was quiet for a moment. I miss you. I'm right here. No, you're not. Not really. The man I married wouldn't treat me like a stranger. The woman I married wouldn't tell me she doesn't know if she loves me. I rinsed my hands and turned to face her. We're both different people now. I'm just being honest about it. I want my husband back. Your husband was someone who loved you completely while you figured out whether you loved him back. That guy's not available anymore. The pain on her face was real, but so was mine. She just hadn't bothered to consider it before. Thursday, she escalated. I came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table with photo albums spread out everywhere. Pictures of our wedding, our honeymoon, various anniversaries and holidays. She'd been crying. Look at these, she said desperately. Look how happy we were. Look how much we loved each other. I glanced at the photos. Those are nice memories. They're not just memories. They're proof that what we had was real, was being the operative phrase. I started gathering my mail from the counter. Past tense. It doesn't have to be past tense, doesn't it? Because the woman in those photos, the one who looked at me like I hung the moon, that woman told me 3 weeks ago that she doesn't know if she loves me anymore. I headed toward the stairs. So either she was lying then or she's lying now. Either way, there's a lie somewhere. Friday night, she tried to force a crisis. When I came home from work, she was sitting on the couch with suitcases beside her. I'm leaving, she announced. I paused in the doorway. Okay, do you need help loading your car? The shocked expression on her face told me this wasn't the reaction she'd expected. That's it? You're not going to ask me to stay? Why would I ask you to stay? If you want to leave, that's your choice. I sat down across from her. Though I have to ask, are you leaving because you're unhappy with our arrangement? Or because you finally figured out you don't love me after all? I'm leaving because you're being impossible. How am I being impossible? I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. No, you're being petty and vindictive. I'm being consistent. You told me where I stand in your life and I accepted it. The fact that you don't like the consequences of your own words isn't my problem. I leaned back. So, are you actually leaving, or is this just another attempt to manipulate me into going back to how things were? She stared at me for a long moment, then started crying again. I don't recognize you anymore. Good. Because the man you used to know was a doormat who let his wife treat him like a convenience store. This version has more self-respect. She didn't leave. The suitcases disappeared the next morning. Saturday, she tried one final desperate move. She called my mother. I was reading in the living room when my phone rang. Your wife called me, my mom said without preamble. She's very upset. She says you two are having problems and you won't talk to her. We talk every day. She says you're treating her like a roommate. That's accurate. There was a pause. Do you want to tell me what's going on? I explained the situation calmly and objectively. My mother listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. So, let me understand this, she said when I finished. She told you she doesn't know if she loves you anymore. And you responded by treating her exactly how she described wanting to be treated. Correct. And now she's upset because she's getting what she asked for. That appears to be the case. My mother was quiet for a moment. You know, I raised you better than to let people walk all over you. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. When I got off the phone, she was standing in the doorway, having obviously listened to my side of the conversation. Your mother thinks I'm a terrible wife, she said quietly. My mother thinks you made a mistake and now you're trying to avoid the consequences. She's right. The admission seemed to surprise her as much as it surprised me. I did make a mistake. A huge one. Which mistake was that? Taking you for granted. Thinking I could just test the waters of not loving you, and you'd wait around while I figured it out. She sat down heavily in the chair across from me. Why did you say it in the first place? She sat down heavily in the chair across from me. Because I was scared. Because loving you completely felt vulnerable and risky. And I thought maybe if I pulled back emotionally, I'd feel more in control. And how did that work out for you? Terribly. I've never felt less in control in my life. She looked at me with genuine desperation. I know I love you. I know it now. Please, can we try to fix this? I studied her face for a long moment. You know what the real problem is? It's not that you said you didn't know if you loved me. It's that you were willing to say it at all. It's that somewhere in your mind, you thought it was acceptable to tell your husband you weren't sure about your feelings for him. I know. I know it was horrible. It wasn't just horrible. It was revealing. It showed me exactly how little my emotional well-being mattered to you in that moment. I stood up. And that's not something you can just apologize away. So, there's nothing I can do. You're just done with us. I'm not done with us. But the us you're talking about, where I love you unconditionally while you figure out whether you love me back, that version is done forever. The devastation on her face was complete. She was finally understanding that some words don't just hurt in the moment. They change everything permanently. What happens now? She whispered. Now you decide whether you want to build something new with someone who values himself, or whether you'd rather find someone else who will let you test the waters of loving them. I headed toward the stairs. But either way, the man who used to beg for your affection is gone. You made sure of that. She was learning that you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I was learning that sometimes the best way to show someone your value is to stop giving it away for free. 6 weeks had passed since that conversation changed everything. 6 weeks of her trying every strategy to get back what she'd thrown away so carelessly. But here's what she hadn't expected. I was thriving. The gym membership I'd barely used, 5 days a week now. That book I'd been meaning to read, finished it, and 3 others. Turns out, when you stop pouring emotional energy into someone who doesn't appreciate it, you have a lot more energy for yourself. Sunday morning, she made one final attempt. I was having coffee on the back patio when she sat across from me. "There's something," she said. "I'm listening. What if we started over? Dating. Getting to know each other again. Building something new." Why would I want to do that? Because I love you. I know that now, completely and absolutely. I set down my tablet. You love me now, today. But what about next week when life gets stressful? Next month when you're overwhelmed? How do I know you won't decide you're not sure again when loving me feels inconvenient? You don't, she admitted. You'd have to trust me. Trust you? The woman who told me she doesn't know if she loves me, who thought it was acceptable to keep me around as a convenience while figuring out her feelings. Tears flowed down her cheeks. What do you want from me? I've admitted I was wrong. I've apologized. Have you? Because what you've tried is manipulation and guilt trips. What you haven't tried is respecting the boundaries you created. What does that mean? It means accepting that actions have consequences. Some words can't be unsaid. The dynamic between us has permanently changed. I looked at her directly. You don't get to decide when we go back to normal just because you've decided you were wrong. So, what would it take? Honestly, I don't know if there's anything. You didn't just hurt my feelings that night. You showed me who you are, someone who takes people for granted, someone who thinks love is something you can turn on and off. That's not who I am. When you felt secure in my love, you decided you could afford to be uncertain about yours. That's exactly who you are. She was quiet for a long moment. Just tell me what I need to do. Stop trying to convince me to go back to the way things were. Accept that the man who loved you unconditionally while you figured out whether you loved him back is gone. If you want any relationship with me going forward, it's on completely different terms. What terms? Terms where I come first in my own life, where my emotional well-being matters as much as yours, where you prove you want me here instead of me proving I'm worth keeping. The next few days were different. She stopped trying to recreate the past and started paying attention to the present. When I came home, she didn't bombard me with conversation or force intimacy. She just existed in the same space, respectfully. Thursday evening, she surprised me. I was making dinner when she came into the kitchen. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not letting me get away with it. For showing me what I actually lost." She leaned against the counter. "I spent 6 years taking you for granted, and it took losing you to realize what I had." "You haven't lost me. I'm right here. No, the version of you that would do anything for me is gone. And honestly, good. That man deserved better than someone who wasn't sure if she loved him." It was the first genuine thing she'd said in weeks. "So where does that leave us?" I asked. "I don't know. But I know I want to earn you back the real way, not by guilt or manipulation, but by actually being worthy of you." I studied her face for the first time since this whole thing started.